All right. Well, thank you all for joining the session of Being Accessibility Anti-Hero. I always want to start out with assumptions because I am a big fan of assuming positive intent. So the assumption is that you're out here, you're attending the session because you want to be more accessible, and that maybe some of the work that you're doing isn't there yet because it's hard or it seems expensive or a big lift. And you're trying to walk that tightrope there. And it's between what's your timeline, what are your budgets, what are the stakeholders' needs, what are this, what are that. All of these things you want to do well, and we're an industry of people pleasers, and we want everyone happy. So we're always juggling, and we're always doing that, and we are assuming that you're here because you want to make accessibility more accessible. So before we get into all that, though, who am I to talk about it? Well, my name is Donna Bungard. I am a client lead over at Canopy Studios, and I have alphabet soup after my name because I love to learn. I love to continue to grow and really be really expand my understanding and my empathy, and overall just my ability to really provide more to my clients, their end users, and so on. And as I mentioned, I work over at Canopy Studios. I am fortunate enough to be able to work with such an amazing team as we partner with these fantastic clients who do so much good in the world. And I am just really just proud to be a part of this team with our holistic approach to support in a way that's focused on incremental growth and website evolution as opposed to just your maintenance support tasks. So the reality is that accessibility is really not an optional thing anymore. Back when I was still a themer, I would consider, oh, we should add that on. It's not. It's not an add-on. It's not just something we can put in there. It's not optional. But the good news is, by building empathy and building accessibility into strategic aspects of your KPIs, you can make it easier. You are empowered to make accessibility something that is just part of the process. I always say just what we do. You see, normally I say on my intro slide, and I kind of spaced that, to be honest with you. Growing up, I was the only one in my immediate family who didn't have some kind of a disability. I mean, we had everything covered. But at the end of the day, for me, being accessible, making sure everyone had the accommodations they need, wasn't about being a good person. It wasn't about this. It wasn't about that. It was about the fact that if I didn't make sure my hard of hearing sister, and that's how she identifies. So most people like to say people with challenge disabilities or what have you, but she identifies as being hard of hearing. My hard of hearing sister wasn't going to help me carry vast amounts of, holiday groceries up the stairs if I did not make sure that the way I presented the information was in a way that she was able to receive and therefore be accountable for. So I take a really pragmatic approach to the fact that accessibility and building things in isn't an add-on. It's a part of what we do every day. And for me, it took a while to get to that bridge between that professional understanding of websites and what I had been doing all of my life to just be in my life. So hero versus an anti-hero. We're going to talk about a quick recap of what accessibility is and how it is not charity. We're going to talk about how it makes sense, where we're beginning, and where we are right now in this world we live in today. Next steps, and of course, some question and answer time at the end. So what is the difference between a hero and an anti-hero? A hero is the person who comes in and saves the day. They're that archetype. There's that person idolized for their courage and their selflessness and all of these beautiful archetypes, qualities. Whereas an anti-hero typically does things a little bit more for their own benefit or their own internal weight of how important things are. They're not going to really have that complete, idealistic point of view. So with that understanding of a hero and anti-hero, let's take a step back. People with disabilities don't need you to save them. You're not doing things on your website to cater to a community. They need your respect, just as any user group should. But you're not going to be their hero. Your team of designers and developers and marketing people and all of these strategic, brilliant people are not going to save anyone. The fact is, your website needs traffic from this community. And in order to get their traffic and build their trust, you need to respect them and meet them where they are. Because each user, regardless of their ableness or what have you, regardless of how they identify, disabled, not disabled, what have you, they're the heroes of their own stories. All content strategists should tell you that an effective strategy is to have the user be the hero of their own story. For example, you go to Amazon to buy a sweater or a pair of socks. Your ability to navigate the site and purchase that item and receive it in the mail a couple days later makes you the hero of your own story. It doesn't have to be an exciting story. It could be socks. They could be boring. But you're able to do it. You're able to accomplish your goal and you're able to take care of it yourself. So therefore, why do we want to be the anti-hero? What are we going for? Well, the truth is you need a little bit of selfishness to be a good anti-hero. You need to understand that you have to take care of your organization's bottom line, that your team needs to promote accessibility just because your team needs to know that you're doing the right thing. Not because they want you to save them, but because it's the right thing and that's what you do. And finally, you need to be able to sell it upstream. You need to be able to tell your stakeholders the positive impacts, the return on your investment by being accessible. So you get to be an anti-hero. So a quick recap on accessibility itself. Online accessibility is about removing the barriers. There's about a quarter of US citizens, slightly less than that of Canadian adults, who all self-identify as disabled. This doesn't include minors. So if you're working, I don't know, with a bunch of teens who are looking at schools, all of those individuals who may identify ADD, ADHD, ASD, all of those users who may have challenges of physical, visual, mobility, what have you, challenges, they're not in those numbers. So we need to use the POUR principle, the perceive, operate, understand, and robust principles to look at our sites and make sure we're breaking down those barriers so we are inclusive. So I touched a little bit on what these are. Typically with accessibility, we break it down into one of four categories: cognitive, visual, audio, and mobile. And with that, we need to also keep in mind that of those quarter of your users that are coming to your site with a self-identified challenge, you also have individuals who are looking at your site on a cracked phone screen with low bars in a crowded place where they can't hear anything. And maybe they're holding their backpack in one hand or their groceries or a purse, and they're juggling that and a coffee, and they're doing all of these things. And you know what? They're distracted. They have a hard time using the screen because of mobility. It's loud, and maybe there's even a glare on that screen to boot. There are reasons that all users benefit from the accessible site. And when we think globally, when we think beyond, North America, we're talking about 1 in 7 people. So because of that, we follow the guidelines. And those are brought by the W3C and the WCAG, or Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Now, in the United States, Section 508 compliance is WCAG 2.0. Those were the original collection of more than 40 guidelines to help break down those barriers. Since the 508 refresh a few years back, WCAG 2.1 was released. And typically this is the industry standard we're going for, is 2.1, because it handles things like line height and screen orientation and things that, frankly, especially on all of our mobile devices, are becoming more and more important, or greater barriers are being seen. And then we have the levels, of course, A, AA, and AAA. AA being the standard because it casts the widest net. But let's get back to our main story. Accessibility is not charity. In the UK, the music industry loses $2.5 million, pounds, of ticket sales per year. With US customers with vision loss have an estimated $175 billion of disposable income. Meanwhile, 2% of e-commerce transactions are completed by those who are blind. We have 50 billion pounds a year being lost out in e-commerce sites in the UK alone. And combined, the disabled community has a disposable income of $8 trillion. This is not a community that needs to be saved. We need to respect them. We need to bring these numbers to our stakeholders and show that overall these numbers matter. This is a viable market because it makes sense. Now we understand that budgets, they matter. We're all trying to balance our task lists, whether you be Jira, Teamwork, Asana, pick one. We're all sitting around looking at our tickets about things we want to improve on our websites. And we want to say, well, what is going to produce the greatest impact? What are we going to be able to do this month or this year? If you build it into the process, it stops being this huge list that you kind of have that separate bucket at the end of, well, when I have free time, I'll get to that. So let's look at more statistics. Let's help you build the argument to bake it in right from the start. 2 out of 3 internet transactions are abandoned because of the low accessibility for vision. Call companies have once a week. Internet users who are blind call companies, call services. Wow, I am having the worst time with this slide. Okay, let's back it up. So basically, you get 2 out of 3 people will not be able to check out or go through a process or maybe interact with your site or your forms or your individual sites because they're unable to see. We're going to have people calling in more, which means you need more people manning the phones. You have more people having potential or a greater risk of misinformation. And you have fewer than 1 in 3 sites have clear contact information to those who aren't able to use it by visual means. And then there's SEO. When it comes down to it, search engines drive almost all of our traffic to our sites. But search engines can't see your pretty pictures. They can read the alt text. They can understand the meaning and derive the importance of that information. They can read or scan your captions and your transcripts. And they have learned so much. Their algorithms have become so advanced that they can derive meaning for content. So things like long tail keywords suddenly have greater value. Search engines aren't going to hear your cool videos, but they're learning. Those algorithms are advancing. Every new one tries to bring relative content. It's trying to diversify content. Some of the recent search engine updates to Google have been to make it so that way you can't have all 10 of the top posts. It breaks it out so the same domain is less likely to own them. All of page 1. They're paying attention, they're growing, and they're using the same code, the same information that's being used to make a site accessible. So the 411, your alt text, your descriptive links, which means don't have it say read more over and over again, your captions and transcripts, your unique page titles. I always say it's like me. I'm from New Hampshire. I don't want to go to a New York subway station and be sitting on the train and say subway stop, subway stop, subway stop, subway stop, subway stop at every dot. I want it to be meaningful to understand of where I am and where I'm going. And that's what those page titles do. That heading structure is so important. It helps people navigate a page, whether they're using assistive technology or just maybe a power user who only wants to use their keyboard. That heading structure also gives weight to search engines telling you, how valuable is this really? And then reading level matters. Typically, they say either the 6th or 9th grade reading level for most general public sites. And it's not that your readers are necessarily at that level. It's that unless you're having a site that people go to only for a specific task, maybe you work with microscopes and you have very advanced people coming to learn about the different types of microscopes you have available. Maybe you have a story about, or sorry, a site where you're doing research about memory and you want to understand the effects of Alzheimer's on the brain and how that progresses and how different, artistic areas of the brain light up and other areas don't as much as they used to. Maybe if you have those specific sites, you don't necessarily need to judge that 6th to 9th grade reading level because your users are coming for you for something specific. But if you have someone and you're targeting a general public who's on their phone or their tablet in the evening, scrolling through a page, trying to quickly get the gist, is this for me? That's when you need to pay attention, because it's not always about the reading level of the user. It's the reading level and the attention span of the user at that time. And then, of course, there's the legal piece. As I mentioned earlier, USA goes by, for the American with Disability Act, Section 508 is 2.0 AA. And up in Canada, we're at 2.1 AA. That's just because the Bill C-81 was passed after the 2.1 was released. So 23% of U.S. related litigations and settlements have happened in the past 3 years. Now, why? Well, Winn-Dixie was kind of a trendsetter. You see, when he was unable to get his prescription, a gentleman was unable to get his prescription online, the courts ruled that their website was a gateway to a brick and mortar location. If you have a brick and mortar location, your website is therefore, through precedence, a portal to that. Just like any other doorway, it has to be accessible. In Domino's, they tried to push back, saying, oh, there's too much gray area. They weren't even heard when they tried to appeal it. Looking at the numbers, it's huge. The 177% increase over 1 year. And it's still growing. So where do we begin? I keep saying we need to bake it in. We got to bake it in. We got to bake it in. Well, what does that mean to you, right? Measure twice, cut once. Let's start with statistics. Let's start with the data. You've already heard how much money people are potentially losing out on internationally. Think about it. An Echo Dot, I can't say the other name because of the room I'm currently sitting in, is going to be used, or a like voice search will be responsible for about 50% of searches, they say sometime this year. 51% of B2B marketers are creating visual assets. And truth be told, that's not going to be very different for B2C. There's 100 million hours of video content watched on Facebook. 1.5 billion. That's right. Aging population is going to triple to 1.5 billion by 2050. That's me. I'm going to be a part of that 1.5 billion, and I want to be able to use websites. And if you can say that you're not going to be one of the aged population by 2050, hey, go you. But if you're like me, That means I need to work now to make this standard operating procedure so I can use the net later. AntiHero. So always start with your branding. Are your colors accessible? Now, if it's a light gray highlight box that doesn't offer value, maybe it's something that doesn't necessarily have to have a high contrast with its background. It actually just has to make sure the text on top of it has enough high contrast so the text is readable or perceivable, I should say. But you want the colors, to your brand colors, to have enough contrast so that users are able to perceive them. You need to write your words in a clear and concise way to make sure that your meaning is easily understood. You need to be consistent. Now, don't get me wrong, when I talk about consistency, I'm not saying use the same voice over every medium, or sorry, the same tone over every medium. The analogy I typically use is that when I'm at dinner table with my husband, is a very different tone than when I am calling him quick from the grocery store, hey, quick, do we have eggs? You don't need to use the same tone, but you need to be consistent about the way you speak about yourself, the types of vocabularies you use, the words you try to use, the words you might try to avoid, the inclusive manner that you present yourself with. And then representation. Representation matters. People need to see things that are meaningful to them. It's simple as an advertisement in a magazine or on TV or online. It's simple. People want to see themselves. They want to understand that it's for them. So how do you do that? You build these pieces into your personas. You already have them. You already have personas. You know who your, for example, who a student would be, who the parent would be, who the influential teachers or guidance people would be in that type of setting. You know who your alumni would be. You would know who all of these people would be in that higher ed world. But regardless where you are, you know who you're talking to. You've already got this information. So plug it into this great tool by the CDC, by Cornell, that references CDC data. It'll help you learn, okay, if I have a man who's 65 to 74, and what kind of disability am I looking at? In this case, I chose mobile. You can't choose all. It's going to give you the percentages broken down where this person is and how likely this person is to be able to have one of the disabilities. And then you don't make a big deal of it. You don't go, oh, this person has the ambulatory disability. No. You just build it in as part of his personality. This is Howard Williams. He's a 60-year-old gentleman who's a sales executive who's been married to his partner, Jeffrey, who's a teacher. This is their household income. His hobbies include wheelchair tennis. The end. Moving on. You don't need to make it a big deal. It's not. I referenced my family growing up. It's not a big deal. It's just who they are. It's a part of how we lived our lives. It's not a big deal. But giving yourself the data and building the potential of someone experiencing barriers right from the beginning into your personas helps you start thinking in terms, and helping everyone who references those personas start thinking in terms beyond their own scope, beyond their own perspective. And then user testing. There's a couple of ways you want to do this, and I call them waves. This is the first wave, is to test as you go. Do a wireframe analysis. There used to be a mega menu that a lot of the sites I worked on would use, and that mega menu out of the box was not screen reader accessible. It was very hard to use from your keyboard. It was very, very difficult, and some links were getting skipped or just not seen, and maybe a third column over. It was a mess. But it was the best solution for a lot of other reasons. So we started saying, well, our team's going to need 4 hours to make this accessible after we install it. We started treating it like just another configuration. Since I believe that particular extension has been made accessible out of the box, but at the time, We just added 4 hours to our estimates, not to pad our estimates, but because the organization I was working with at the time, agency I was working with at the time, well, we were making accessible sites, so that's what we did. Then we have a designer look at it. Maybe your comps are being done by a different group. Have a designer, have them take a look for color contrast. Have them look at that line height. Have them look for keyboard traps. Their designers, UX specialists are used to looking for spacing and other issues. So what you want to do is give them the power to find those potential areas where it might be, you know, somebody with a slightly tremor in their hand might hit the wrong button easily if they're too close together. Have them test that. And then have your developers learn some basic skills to test as they go. It's about being prepared for the challenges you cannot see, or I should say maybe detect. And then whenever possible, test with native users. There's a beautiful community of people out there who want to help too. And they should be paid for their time. Don't get me wrong. They're not helping out of charity either. But a native user is someone who uses assistive technology all the time. And they're going to be able to perceive challenges, or better yet, maybe not perceive the fact that they're missing content better than anyone. The only thing I would really check with this is make sure these are moderated tests. Because, for example, if you have a sound play, someone who is unable to hear may not be able to realize that they missed that audio cue. Just like if you're using a service that has individuals who are unable to see, testing your site, if the screen reader skips a whole section, well, then they may not perceive that. So have those moderated, but it's invaluable to include native users. And then content strategy. You always want to give context to your users as a part of any good content strategy. You want to make sure your verbiage is inclusive. You have captions, you have alt text. Everything you have on your page should provide meaning. You want to keep it focused. Allow for videos to be turned off. Never autoplay a video, especially if you're working with users who maybe have ADHD or on the spectrum. That autoplay of a video, that moving background, any of those things could be just something that distracts them completely from what they were going for. And that's frustrating. They were there for a reason. And these individuals need to get through and be that hero of their own story. And then empower your users to next steps. Again, that part is content strategy 101. You always want users to want to stay on your site or engage with your site. Not every conversion is, you know, a big buy now or donate now or whatever button that websites have. Sometimes it's watch a video. Sometimes it's sign up for a newsletter. Sometimes it's just go to the next blog post. Empower them and make sure that all users are able to take that next step. And then internally, train for empathy. Whenever I'm discussing accessibility with content managers or content editors, I always say train for empathy. Learn to understand what the challenges are more than learning or stressing out what the individual tools that you're going to use are. If you are thinking in terms of how is this going to be perceived by somebody, the tools matter, but they don't matter. Like when I'm talking to my sister, I never noticed it. She actually pointed it out to me. I enunciate my words more. My lips move more exact. I am more facing her, making eye contact, emphasizing my facial structure so that she can read my lips. I did not ever think about it any more that my father is blind in one eye. If I want something, I go up to the right side of them because the left side can be a little awkward. It's just what you do. But I am empathetic to them so I can understand how they're going to perceive my communication. This is no different. Train for empathy first. Use simulators. I love Funkify. It's a beautiful simulator. Use simulators to understand what your users are using or experiencing. And then Well, I had written this originally a while back, pre-COVID. And then the last few months have hit, and I'm seeing more, and I'm reading more, and I'm hearing more about how COVID has changed. Because you see, 7% of us would work remotely prior in the US and 10% of European before the pandemic. Now, nearly 62% of people are working remotely, and 59% of them would prefer to stay remote after. So we need to not only make our websites accessible, but we need to make our everyday lives accessible. It's how we're going to get work done. It's how we're going to get through the rest of 2020. It's how we're going to do this. So how do you apply it? Use captions on your calls. Zoom has auto captioning. Google Hangouts has captioning. Team calls have captioning. Whatever you're using, find it. And again, this is not only for those who identify as being disabled. I am somebody who has children home a lot. Well, by a lot, I mean the last 5 months. Very often, if I, I'll be listening carefully, but I'll be also aware that in the basement, someone is very happy about a particular Xbox game. Turning on captions helps me stay focused because I can hear and read it at the same time. Avoid the idioms and the acronyms. We're all working in different situations. Make it clear and concise. Be descriptive and be accommodating. So ask your team what's going to make it successful. As a project manager or client lead, what I do a lot of the times for any of my team members on normal circumstances is I say, okay, at the end of a call, this is great. We've got a plan. What do I need to give you to be successful? The same can be said regardless if you're project managing. What accommodations do you need to be accessible now that, or to be successful now that we are in this existence? Do you need a different captioning? Do you need things written differently? Do we need to communicate via Slack for this type of information, but documented differently for another? Talk to each other and assume positive intent. I can't stress that last part so much. And I can't stress it enough. There are going to be times when you're not able to perceive the information in this world the way you would want to, or the way you felt you did in person. Communication is being relearned by so many people. And it's not only for those who are adjusting to working from home. For people like myself, my working from home environment is a lot more crowded than it used to be. And that's fine. I love my family. I'm very glad they're around. But I'm not exactly used to them being quite around so much. So I sometimes am going to, say things quickly or type it quickly because I'm trying to get the thought out to a team member while I'm not interrupted. And I need them to assume positive intent, just like when they're speaking to me and they're juggling their own existence, I'm assuming that of them as well. So if somebody says something that I can't perceive, that I don't find descriptive enough, or maybe it is a meeting where I'd like them to have captions so I can understand, perceive it in multiple ways. If they don't think of that, it's okay. I can ask. I can communicate my needs in a very respectful, positive way. And we can work together to get this done. So next steps. Keep in mind that accessibility in any form, but especially online, is a cycle. It's never done. This is not a task list that you make once, check all the boxes and move on. Even the most accessible sites over time will drift. Why do they drift? Maybe a content editor's in a hurry and miss something. They get to be human. It happens. Maybe you have a lot of different content editors in there and something gets lost in translation. Maybe technologies change. Maybe this, maybe that. There are countless variables that can take a site and have it slowly drift out. And truth be told, like all support, it can always be incrementally improved. Canopy, we're big in our support about that incremental improvement, that evolution of a website. And the same can be said on this focus on accessibility. There's always room for improvement. So where do we start? Well, we analyze. Some people call it audit. I prefer to call it an analysis because it isn't that one and done. We analyze. We find strategic improvements. Maybe you want to start with what is the biggest gain for the lowest lift. And you approve, you go through what's that user experience going to be, what's that user journey, that customer decision journey. Then let's develop the solution. Let's educate our content editing team on how that works and what to do next. And then after a month or two, let's reanalyze and see how that works.